let's give a little bit of your background. You're a former Black Panther.
That's correct.
And Professor, talk a little bit about the work that you've done over the years.
Well, I originally started off as a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was SNCC at the time. And, of course, that over many years involved ourselves in a very unique opportunity to be involved in Panther survival programs. Our SNCC chapter in San Antonio was actually a hybrid, and that hybrid was actually a organization that was mixed with SNCC and the Black Panthers. So we were able to take Black Panther programs, survival programs, and combine them with a SNCC chapter. And so we had like a very unique chapter. It was part SNCC, half SNCC, and half Black Panther. Those survival programs included a free breakfast program and free legal aid. We had free breakfast program, et cetera, et cetera. So it worked out quite well.
You know, when we think back to the Panthers and us being in Oakland, of course, we're familiar with a lot of, you know, the inner workings and accomplishments of the Panthers. One of the things that we often talk about is that before Jesse Jackson had his Rainbow Coalition, you had an original Rainbow Coalition under Fred Hampton, you know, who was the Chicago chapter leader. And they talked about the importance of bringing people from different ethnic backgrounds together. When we look back to the heyday of the 60s and 70s and the movements there, it seems like people were making an effort to come together. Can you shed some light on that? I mean, were there divides? Were there points of unification? And if so, how did you achieve them?
Well, one of the interesting things about the Panthers was they never employed what we called at the time cultural nationalist philosophy. The philosophy that was employed was termed revolutionary nationalism. And that is, people can have pride in their culture, people can have pride in the things they do in their culture as a people, but that doesn't mean you have to hate anybody else. So having pride in your culture does not come at the expense of hate or distrust or dislike of another culture. And as a result of that philosophy, the Panthers and a few other groups were able to actually form coalitions to coalesce on issues that they could both work on together, in which there was a commonality between the oppression that they faced in their community versus oppression faced in another community, and specifically in the Mexican-American community here in Texas, and the Black community as well. So I think that was the aim, and in fact, it had to do with philosophy to begin with, because without the correct philosophy, you're really going down a blind alley.
What would be some of the tenets of that philosophy?
Well, one thing, as I mentioned, pride in your ethnicity and culture, but not at the expense of disliking or hating anyone else. And then recognizing that the goals of the organization have to be issue-oriented, work-oriented, and have to take into account those specific things that are oppressive or of an oppressive nature. And when you look at communities of color, then what you inevitably discover is that there's commonality between the two. For example, police abuse, police brutality, something very common in many different ethnic communities. So recognizing that there are things in common is crucial toward developing a working coalition and to break down the barriers that people may have had or have toward one another.
You know, in San Antonio, we hear about the Brown Berets here. Did the Panthers and Brown Berets in this part, were you all around at the same time? Did you all work together? What were some of the projects, if so?
That's a real good question, and historically the answer to the question is yes. The Brown Berets are very active in San Antonio around the same era in which I was active at the time. And there were times when there were joint demonstrations, when there were joint activities against police abuse or against racism in schools and educational institutions. And there were occasions when we actually supported them in a takeover of a school, and back in the days when schools were being taken over, where they supported us in police brutality issues and so forth. And by the way, the Brown Berets are still active here in San Antonio and have been helpful to the Black community to start a Black community radio station. So they've attended several town hall meetings because they, like many members of the Black community, recognize that there's a commonality there, even in a radio station, and is that you can't get these issues out on the established media. So you have to have media that goes beyond what's being heard on a regular basis.